When he first went into jail, he had a weed addiction. I thought him going into jail would help that. And it was a relief. He's going to get some help, he's going to get off the weed. But no, it was putting the kid in a sweet shop, going to jail.
This is the story of one mum, we're calling her Julie, who became ensnared in a sophisticated, well-organised drug economy operating inside prison, with terrifying and costly consequences for families outside. It begins when her son is sent to Wandsworth Prison in South London on a short sentence, the very first time he'd been to jail.
After about a week of getting there, he started ringing me up saying he owed money. On the first night, they come up to you and give you a little bit of spice. So it'll just get you over the first night, your nerves and everything like that. And that's on the induction wing. And then obviously by the time you go on to the main wing, that debt follows you.
So it's literally within a week of going in?
On the induction wing.
He's not only tried a new drug,
yeah,
he now owes money.
Yeah.
And he quickly owes a lot of money, £200–300 a week. Money, of course, as a prisoner, he doesn't have. So the dealers inside jail are soon contacting her outside, demanding she pay up or her son will get hurt. As her son's debts rise, the calls and texts to her become more threatening.
Owe money big time. It needs paying before Friday or he gets opened up. We know where you live from before someone paying. In here, we boss. You've till Monday to pay, or we be round.
We paid it because we didn't want him to get hurt. Then the debts got bigger and bigger. So I was actually on holiday one day when I got a text to say that he's going to get hot sugared if I don't pay £200 or £300 by the morning. Hot sugaring is you boil water and you put sugar in it and they throw it at you and then obviously it burns you. They don't care, blatantly sending their names and bank details. And obviously I'm laying there in a hotel thinking, oh, do I pay, shouldn't I pay? And I rang up once to prison, spoke to the officer and he told me that my son has to pay his debts.
That was his advice?
That was his advice.
Julie is stunned not only with the officer's advice, but that he seems entirely unsurprised by the fact her son is racking up debt for illegal drugs in jail. She makes repeated attempts to alert the prison authorities, sending a raft of increasingly desperate emails across months and months, phoning them again and again for help. We've seen the emails, Julie explicitly telling them how dealers are targeting her son and then demanding money from her. In this one, she lists the names and bank details of 14 of the many accounts she's paid money into. And yet she says still nothing was done to stop the spiralling debt or the intimidation. She emails Wandsworth Prison. Just wondering why my son is asking for hundreds of pounds. Funny how he's meant to be in jail and not on holiday. She asks again, can you please find out why my son needs £3 grand? £3 grand. She constantly writes telling the authorities the demands for money and the threats continue to come from inside the prison. But in one email they tell her to inform the police. We in the prison cannot assist with outside prison issues. She tells the police about the threats from the prison dealers and they are clearly convinced the risk is real.
We had our house flagged, panic buttons put in, everything at my house. I even had this app on my phone that if I ever felt threatened, I could just press it and the police would hear what was going on without me ringing them. That's how serious it got.
At one point, her son was moved to a drug-free wing, but he told Julie there were more drugs there than anywhere else. She says at best, staff were turning a blind eye. At worst, some were actively involved. The evidence arriving at the door soon after her son was released from jail.
He had the mobile number of the drug dealer in Wandsworth and he rang him and said, oh, do you know anyone on the outside that can hook me up? My son rang me that night and said, oh, Mum, guess what? I went, what? He went, the officer come to my door with the crack. I said, so what? So you rang somebody in Wandsworth Prison and they sent a prison officer to your door with drugs? And he went, yeah. And then I went round there a few days later and he turned up again. And I recognised him and all of a sudden I found out he left.
The prison service said it didn't recognise the allegations about staff conduct and won't hesitate to take the toughest action against those who break the rules. The Prison Officers Association said Wandsworth has robust security at the gate in regular use, and that drugs get into prisons in a variety of ways, including drone deliveries, throwovers and external visitors. Wandsworth is a Victorian prison, one of the biggest in the country, and is facing a crisis on a number of fronts. Appalling conditions, overcrowding, high levels of staff turnover and violence. Kay has been in and out of jail his whole life, for offences including drugs and theft. His last spell was at Wandsworth on a driving offence. He says the market for all contraband is extremely lucrative, so it's no surprise some prison staff become involved in bringing in and supplying drugs.
Their salary's shit. I wouldn't go and work in a prison for whatever it is a year. They make more money in the 6 months they're there, probably earn 3 times that in the 6 months they're there before they leave, just by bringing in tobacco and drugs. Prices are through the roof, like £500 for a gram of tobacco or whatever it is out there. They're only about 15 quid out here. You're paying 500 quid in there. It's stupid.
Phones are a critical commodity in the illegal prison economy, smuggled in huge numbers.
As for buying mobile phones, smartphones, you're talking about £1,000 plus up to £1,500. A little Zanko like that, which is the size of your thumb, you can buy at a shop out here for £20. They go for £300 to £500.
Callum, not his real name, has just finished a sentence at Wandsworth for assault. He accepts drugs and other contraband get into the prison in many ways, but he's in no doubt some staff are very involved.
So when the screws are passing the drugs in, most of them at night times, they don't get searched, they can come straight through, they pass the opening door, so all it's doing is making violence. It's getting people in debt, and they can't afford to get out of it, and then the mums get the phone calls and it stresses out their family, so it's just a big ripple effect, it just everything.
But while former prisoners may see organised drug networks as part of normal life in prison, the MP Fleur Anderson admits she was naive about it all, until Julie, one of her constituents, came to her for help to get her son out of Wandsworth and into a different jail.
So my immediate concern was for her son. So how could we get him out of that situation? So I thought, great, we've got an achievement. We've got him moved to a different prison, and that he would be away from the people who were extorting him for drugs. And within 2 days, Julie was being given bills of £370, which she could then see would be escalating, and nothing had changed from the move, which points really to it not being just about Wandsworth Prison. This is about all of our prison service.
She says she raised her concerns directly with the governor at Wandsworth and others across the prison estate, but wasn't reassured by the response.
Did you get a sense there was a level of defeatism, or was there confidence that this could be sorted out?
So there's a bit of shrugging the shoulders and saying, what can we do? Which I think comes from the top as well. It comes from the government. There needs to be a real change. Otherwise, this is just going to carry on. It feels like it was a ticking time bomb quite a long time ago, that actually, when you see the impact it's got on not just the prisoners, but on people like Julie, in my constituency, just people, mums, grandmas, people being extorted, then this is not actually cutting crime, it's breeding it.
There is no doubt this is an issue beyond one prison. Just last month, the prison's ombudsman linked 4 deaths at HMP Park in Wales directly to the drug spice, making an urgent public appeal to prisoners to destroy all supplies. A member of staff is currently being investigated for allegedly smuggling drugs into the jail. The Ministry of Justice told us there is a zero-tolerance approach to drugs, and it's invested £100 million in tough new security measures to stop more getting in.
Since my son's first prison sentence, about 50,000 into various bank accounts, which obviously I've given you all the details for.
I mean, how do you even manage that?
It was my parents' savings.
How is he now?
He's an addict now. He's an addict now. He's always going to be an addict. The system made him a drug addict. That's why I look at it. And no one's taking accountability for that.
Tackling the highly organised drug economy in jail is an enormous challenge. A captive, often vulnerable market creating endless demand. And with so much money to be made, stemming the supply is just not working.
Well, with me here is Mark Fairhurst, who chairs the Prison Officers Association. And joining us from Gloucester is John Podmore, who served as a prison governor and as an inspector of prisons. Can I come to you first, John Podmore? What do you make of that? The sheer level of organisation, it would seem, the fact that even families outside are being threatened with violence to pay these debts.
Well, it's no surprise to me. I've been writing about this for years. Serious organised crime is seriously well organised in prison. And, you know, here we see effectively a mafia-style protection racket where families have been suffering. But we've known the drug problem in prisons for a long time. It's worse now than it ever has, but we've never, until now, properly asked the question, who pays? And if you extrapolate up from this particular case, I would say that the illicit drug economy in prisons is worth about £1 billion, and it needs to be tackled. But it's not about evanescent ministers who come and go and secretaries of state and prison ministers. It's about leadership, management and culture of the prison and probation service itself.
I mean, as you say, the scale of this problem is quite extraordinary. The Chief Inspector of Prisons recently said he was in a prison where there were more people under the influence of drugs than sober, and in another jail where a fifth of prisoners said they developed a drug habit only once they're inside prison. So why isn't there more focus on this, or what is going wrong here?
Well, I mean, the prison service, as demonstrated in this case, just don't seem to care. It works quite well for them in a sense, because if you have this level of serious organised crime, you're not going to get prison disturbances, because serious organised criminals are not going to allow for disturbances while a lot of money is being made. But yes, we have an excellent Chief Inspector of Prisons who's been talking about this for some time, about people going in clean and coming out addicted. Now, the very least we should do in prisons is do no harm, but the prison service, not just with drugs, but with employment, education and training, is doing a considerable amount of harm. And as I say, this is about leadership and management and culture. Everyone talks about overcrowding. Yes, we have an overcrowding problem, but one of the prisons that Charlie Taylor went in and observed a major drug problem was a prison called Wood Hill, which is a modern, purpose-built prison, well-resourced and not overcrowded. So this is not just about old Victorian crumbling city jails.
Let me bring in Mark Fairhurst. I mean, it is clear that drugs get into prisons in a variety of ways, and no one suggests that there are huge numbers of prison officers involved. But there are prison officers involved, and that is a part of the problem, isn't it?
Well, it's not for me to deny that there are corrupt staff. There are corrupt staff in every public sector service, including the police. Ourselves are no exemption, but we are doing a lot to tackle that. And what I will say is that the majority of staff are hard-working, decent, honest people. We don't want to work with corrupt staff. We want them rooted out, kicked out, prosecuted and incarcerated for their crimes.
But I mean, are they part of what people are saying is a serious organised crime network operating within the jails? You heard Julie say a prison officer came to her house to deliver drugs to her son.
That is really concerning, but we can only act if we've got the intelligence. So we need intelligence from prisoners' families. We have regional anti-corruption teams who work in conjunction with the police. But we can do more. There are measures in place, including security at the gate. But we can do more. We need to be more robust with lockdown searches, with target searches. Unfortunately, governors in prisons these days are more concerned with regime instead of safety.
I mean, you say that not a lot of officers are involved, but figures show the number of prison officers being investigated in relation to the supply of drugs in prison has gone up significantly in the past 3 years. So this is a problem that's getting worse. Do you acknowledge that?
It is a problem that's more highlighted now because we have better procedures in place and regional teams in place to look into this and gather intelligence and act.
I mean, John Podmore, prisoners we spoke to were very, very clear that there is a lot of money to be made. The government says it has put up pay to help the recruitment drive so there are more prison officers. They say they're spending £100 million to improve security to stop drugs getting in. Why does it not appear to be working?
Well, we have a real problem at the moment about the vulnerability of staff. And it's absolutely right that the majority of prison officers are hardworking and dedicated. Now, if you were to say that in any one cohort of prison officers, there were, say, 100 who were corrupt, Now, in my experience, the vast majority of those are not criminally, they're by criminal intent, they're not malicious, they're not malign, but they have been conditioned, manipulated, threatened. We're talking now about honey traps. Staff are very, very vulnerable, and dealing with corruption properly, and I'm sorry, the prison service is not dealing with corruption properly. It trots out these technical measures. This is a people business. It's not just about having scanners at the gate. It's about leadership, it's management, it's training, and some prisons now do pay a good salary. But prison officers need to be led, and they need to be protected. And in order to protect them, there needs to be a much greater focus on the role of serious organised crime in prisons.
I mean, it's a culture problem. That is about your people, isn't it?
It is a leadership issue, because when they're obsessed with unlocking prisons with absolutely nothing to do for the sake of unlock to look good in front of a increasingly out-of-touch chief inspector, then that has a knock-on effect. What I'm saying is we need to get back to basics. Don't forget that the prison service has been subject to over £900 million worth of cuts from this government. They disbanded dog sections in local prisons like Wandsworth, which would have prevented throwovers. It would have had sniffer dogs at the gate to go through staff and prisoners. They disbanded those dog sections. They haven't invested enough in training on how to recognise how you're getting conditioned as a new member of staff. So there are more robust procedures that we can incur in our prisons to prevent all this. It does need to be tackled, but it needs to be tackled at the front line robustly with support from senior leaders.
Mark Fairhurst and John Podmore, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to end it there. Thank you very much for talking to us this evening.